And we are live. Thank you everyone for tuning in to this afternoon's Facebook Live conversation. Looking forward to a great conversation. And if you have questions, we would love to hear them in the comments and we'll get to those later. My name's Abby Wingfield and I'm an intern here at Moment Magazine. We're here with Max Talisman, actor and writer and director of the new film, Things Like This. Max, would you care to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi, I'm Max. I'm super excited to be here and chat with y'all. My movie is on the way. It should be out very soon. We're in the throes of the end of post-production. So we have a little bit to go and then we'll be ready to share it with the world. But I'm very excited to chat about it today.
Yes, thank you so much for being here.
Of course.
So I wanted to first off talk a little bit about Things Like This. I just
Yeah.
wanted, kind of to get you to describe the movie for us.
Yeah. So the story is about it's a romantic comedy about two guys with the same name. They fall in love and it feels like fate's bringing them together, but is fate ever what you expect it to be? I was really excited by the opportunity to write something about queer people of this age range, millennials, younger millennials, in the Gen Z millennial space, because I feel like a lot of romantic comedies that I've seen and that are being produced are of older people, but or older being like people in their 30s. I meant older than myself, not necessarily older in the scheme of life, but older than myself and older than I know a lot of people who watch content are. And so I really wanted to just tell a story about two people falling in love and explore that. And there's a lot of Jewish ties to this story because obviously I'm a Jewish person, and so both of the lead characters are Jewish men, and there's a lot about our traditions, our culture, and just how we as Jewish people move, sorry, through our lives. That definitely has impacted the story and created these characters to be who they are.
Absolutely. There's a lot that you talked about that I definitely want to unpack.
Sure.
First of all, we're kind of talking about like the rom-com in general, and I feel like historically this genre and many genres of movies have been like spotlighting straight relationships.
Yeah.
I was just wondering, how do you see things like this coming in as like broadening the conversation, and like was that something that you thought about while writing this film? And yeah.
Yeah, no, I think it's definitely something that I've actually only been more aware of as we've been going, through production, post-production, pre-production, all of it.
Mhm.
And but the truth is that when I started to write it, I just wanted to tell a love story with two people. And I just wanted to kind of write from my experience. I happen to be a gay man, and so I just when I envisioned who I would fall in love with, it happened to be another man. And for me, that's really just where it started. But I think things that are groundbreaking are normally begin with something that feels to the person like they're just doing what they need to do. And so for me, it was just what I needed to do to tell this story. And it just excited me to share what falling in love would feel like for me. And but I do agree, obviously, through the history of film, romantic comedies have mostly been about straight people, and I know that in the last few years we've had a little taste of what you could see in queer relationships and romantic comedies. And by little taste, I mean about two or three films. And so I think the film landscape needs to reflect the human landscape, which is diverse and fantastic and beautiful, and it doesn't. And so I think for us to only have two or three queer romantic comedies so far, and I mean we need as many queer romantic comedies as we have straight romantic comedies. Normal, but honestly, by saying normal, what I mean is what's been put down my throat for years and years and years and been shown to me as what quote
Yeah.
unquote a normal couple is. So for me, even to be, right here saying that right now is just how I've been preconditioned to say it. And I think, we, by making this film, are shifting that and are beginning to shift the conversation. So in 10 years, it doesn't even have to be a conversation. It can just be another movie that's coming out, and we don't have to qualify it as a queer romantic comedy. It's just a romantic comedy. But I think right now, because we are one of the first, I'm happy to define us as that, because we have to be the ones to open the door, or one of the ones to open the door, because I know there are other films that are doing it as well. And I think that's really exciting. But I hope that in 10 years, people can just, make a queer film and not have to say this is a queer movie, but just, release a film. And really, that's what excited me at the beginning and even now.
Yes. And I think so much of that comes from like obviously you being the screenwriter and the director for this film. So I really wanted to talk about like the act of switching from the actor side to the directing and now screenwriting side of the industry. And I mean, I know you've had
Yeah.
many acting credits. So I was wondering like what first piqued your interest? Was like it the acting or was it the directorial side of the industry?
It was acting. It's always been acting for me. At least initially, I was an actor ever since I was really young. I was a professional actor back in DC and then in New York. And so acting has always been my first love. And when I started writing, it was really because what I wanted to be auditioning for wasn't being sent to me, or wasn't being put my way, because I'm a specific kind of actor in this industry. I'm, a plus size actor. And so I've never been thought of as anything in this industry more than, you know, a supporting character normally. And I was really wanted to challenge, who I was as an actor and what I'm capable of, because I know I'm capable of more than that. And so I decided to just start writing. And things like this kind of grew from that. In terms of directing, it really just, we did talk to other directors about this project initially. And as we got further along, it just became clear to me and the team that it was my story. And so it wouldn't be right to, pass it off to anyone else. It not necessarily that someone else couldn't have done a great job with it, but it just wouldn't have been the vision of what the script was initially, because it's a very specific vision, it's a very specific thing. And I just felt like I, at the end of the day, would be doing the script a disservice to not actually be the one to bring it to life in the end. And but also as an actor, I love working with other directors, and so that's something that's really exciting, and also other writers. And I think for me, bringing to life someone else's stuff is like a huge honor. And I've
Mhm.
like been really lucky that I've gotten to do it in the past, and hopefully will, do it lots and lots in the future. But it was just with this specific project, I felt like I had to be the one to kind of bring it to fruition at the end of the day. Going further on your question of like switching actor brain to writer brain, even producer brain on set, it was, I mean, like, I wouldn't have traded that job for the world. It was the best job in the history of anything, but it was a lot. And it was exhausting, and it was intense, and it was really demanding. And the only time I really had to just kind of let my mind go was when I was in the makeup chair for like 10 minutes. So in the hair chair, I literally had like 20 minutes to just kind of like let my mind wander.
There
Um,
you go.
Other than that, I was always, being asked questions, like on set, moving things around, and then jumping in front of the camera when it was time. I will say that I couldn't have done it without an associate director, which I had on this first project. I think moving forward, who knows if I would need one on every project I ever do, but having one on this first project, just someone who's a close friend of mine and would watch, the footage and be like, Max, you're good. Like, you don't really need to watch playback. Like, we can move on. Was really important. And also, my associate director knew more about technical aspects of film than I do because I was coming from an actor writer mindset. I don't know too much about cameras. I do now because I've learned on this film, but I really needed someone who knew more than me. It was going to be oh shoot, are we there? Oh, there we go.
Yes, sorry.
I needed someone who knew more than me about no, all good. I needed someone who knew more than me about cameras and technical filmmaking because I was a newbie at that. And so yeah, I think, in the future, who knows if I would always have an associate director because I think you learn things on every project. But it was definitely something I needed on this one, and I'm grateful that I had it. Because without it, I don't think I'd be able to have done all four jobs, at least not on my first film doing four jobs. So
I can't imagine. I was wondering, do you think it was kind of easier to like collaborate with the actors since you had been like in their position? Like how was that environment?
yeah, I do think, I mean, like, that's one thing that I definitely feel I was confident in being a director, was collaborating with actors. I obviously, like, I mean, I've worked as an actor, and I understand the actor's mindset, where we're coming from, and it definitely was exciting to me to get to collaborate with actors as a director. It felt very much like every time I was directing an actor, it was a conversation. It wasn't necessarily me being like, do this, do this, do this. And that was really exciting. And also, I mean, just the people I got to work with were really exciting to me, and really, people who I'd looked up to for years, and then all of a sudden I'm getting to collaborate with them. People, like Jackie Cruz and Cara Buono and Bridget Regan, Eric Roberts. Like, it was all these people who I respected so much. And so having them be there and collaborate, it was amazing and beautiful. And definitely being an actor impacted who I am as a director more than anything else. And I think because of that, we were able to get really wonderful performances that it's just so excited to share. So yeah, I definitely think that was a major part of who I am as a director.
That's so exciting. That's so fun to hear about. Now you also talked about, kind of exploring different directors, but then not going in that direction. But I was
Mm-hmm.
wondering if you did have like any directors that either you've worked with or you contemplated for a while that like
Mm-hmm.
influenced your approach to the film, either in like
Mm-hmm.
a negative or a positive light.
Not in terms of like, would they direct this film? Just because everything I'd done in the past wasn't necessarily in the romantic comedy or just a specific space. So it never really felt like someone who I'd worked with in the past was the right person for this job. But definitely, I mean, anytime I've been on a set, I feel like I've learned from whoever that director was. And I've, listened, and I've um, you know, kind of tried to soak in everything that they're doing. And I think my directing styles, sort of a hodgepodge of all of them. So just what I've learned and what I've picked up, I don't necessarily think it's one more than the other. Obviously, the director who I worked the longest with was Kevin Phillips on Super Dark Times, because the film was, an extended period of time, and I was there for the whole time. So he's the person who I worked with the longest as a director, but I would say he's an amazing director. But I took stuff from him. I took stuff from Matthew Weiner, who I got to work with on Orange is the New Black, and the directors of the Blacklist. Like, I took everything and just kind of, soaked it in, so that when it was my turn in the chair, I knew what I was doing.
Yes. And I was wondering what was the most challenging aspect for you, being like so many different like actor, director, screenwriter for this film, what did you struggle with the most, like on set or even before or after?
I'm not a producer. I mean, like, I definitely like I did do a producing job on this film. I think in the future, I'm not sure that that's the thing I would want to do out of the four. I feel like that's probably it's more technical. My brain is very like I'm super, artistic and wanting to just focus on the creative stuff. And I know that not that sometimes I need to not, but it was definitely harder for me to kind of switch brains and go back to the producer side. Well, I was getting to be creative and do all of that. And honestly, the first few days it was tough for me to find my performance. I feel like I was definitely getting good takes and getting what I needed to, but having to focus on everything else was so new for me that I feel like I was forgetting to focus on myself as the actor for the first few days. And once that kind of clicked, it was great. But it definitely, and also I think when you're doing a film, you definitely grow into the performance. It's the same as doing a show. You learn things about the character every day. But yeah, I would say that those were the two things that definitely were a challenge, but then turned out to be really great.
Great. So then when you were giving your introduction, we kind of talked a bit about, being a Jewish gay man. And so also we just recently like had some Jewish high holidays. So I wanted to kind of switch and talk about your relationship with Judaism and Jewish culture.
Yeah.
So first of all, did you observe the holidays this year and how did they go for you?
So I fasted on Yom Kippur, but unfortunately I had to have a coloring session on Yom Kippur, my spotting session. So I'm literally like sitting in the room for like 8 hours starving and just trying to focus on work, but like really like I'm sure that it was great because like I got to kind of let my mind do something else, but also it was definitely tough. And I wish that we had been able to reschedule because actually I'm someone who kind of loves the high holidays. I think having, 10 days to reflect on like what we could have done better, what we could improve in ourselves, how we can move forward. I mean, like, I think it's a beautiful thing, and most religions don't have that opportunity. So for me, it's a really gorgeous, reflective part of my year, and I really do love to focus on it. So it was tough for me this year to not be able to on that specific day. I did on Rosh Hashanah. I talked to my family and all of that, but once again, this film got in the way, and it's really tough because as a Jewish person, you're supposed to obviously prioritize the high holidays more than anything else. But when you're making your first film and you are on other people's schedule as much as yours, it's really tough to say no to things that need to happen. And so I really just had to create time to make sure that I was observing them in my own way. And I think that's also what's beautiful about Judaism at as it grows is that we are able to make sure that is working for us, that we are practicing Judaism in the way that works for us specifically. And for me, it's about creating space in my day to, be an active member of the Jewish community and religion. And because it's definitely tough to be farther away from my family specifically, because if I was closer to them, I'd be able to attend services with them, or just do the things that we do on high holidays. And even when I lived in New York, it was a little easier because my family's East Coast too, so it's just a little easier to sort of figure that out. Being in LA, it's just things are different here, and it's definitely, I know that there is a large Jewish community here, but I think when you move to a new city, it's you have to find that community, and it's tough when sometimes you don't have enough hours in the day. But I'm definitely make it a priority to connect to the community.
Yeah. Well, we were kind of talking about your schedule. So I just wondered, like, I mean, and we can continue to talk about like specifically this year or past years, whether you found like the lifestyle like of an actor and a director and a screenwriter
Mm.
particularly challenging, like with holidays specifically because most calendars are like typically like catered to like Jewish holiday or sorry, Christian holidays.
Yeah. No, I definitely think so. I think, there's a lot, luckily there are a lot of Jewish people in the entertainment industry, and also who also because I think we're entertainment is centered around large cities with a lot of different
Mm-hmm.
communities. You also have people who are very understanding of you having a specific holiday you're observing or whatever religion or culture that is. People are very understanding of that on sets. That being said, they're not very understanding of you missing something. They're understanding of you taking time or being observant of it, but they're not understanding of you not being there.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, like, it's a business, right? Like, they are going to actively lose out on things because of that. So I understand why it is the way it is. It's frustrating at times. And I mean, I think sometimes it's easier than others, right? I think when holidays like Passover happen around when the Christian holidays are, you are able to take time.
Mm-hmm.
But obviously, the Jewish calendar changes every year, so it's not guaranteed. But I have found within the entertainment industry, there are definitely people who understand that you need time to observe, the holidays that happen, but they don't understand if you need to miss something. It's yeah,
Yes. Yeah, I can only imagine.
yeah,
So then also we were talking about, and you mentioned in your film, this is a story about, a gay Jewish man. And so I was
yeah.
wondering how you see Jewish and queer culture intersecting in your work and in also just in your day-to-day life. And if like,
Mhm.
is there like a tension there, or do you think like, I mean, like in this movie, like, does it complement each other?
Yeah, no, I think, for me as a human being, it complements
Of
my
course.
life. So, I definitely felt like it would complement these characters. I think Judaism in terms of a religion is one of the it's a lot about like learning and just growing. And so I think that Jewish people naturally are ones who grow and learn and adapt. And I think that's beautiful. And so in my personal life, with my family, with Jewish people in the community where I grew up in DC, or where I moved in New York to here, I haven't come up against a lot of homophobia within my Jewish communities. I've only come up with a lot of acceptance, love, and things like that. So for me, I think it complements my life, both aspects, and I think you know the struggle of being both minorities definitely to me kind of makes me a stronger person. It makes me a more focused person. It makes me a more active person. It makes me a more knowledgeable person, and it makes me a more aware person. I think, with all that in mind, it just makes me a stronger human being to recognize both parts of that and of who I am, and they're both extremely important to me. um I think, just where my family's come from in the last 100 to 150 years, which is obviously a short amount of time in terms of human history, but is a very long amount of time in terms of my family. And, you think about all the things that my family did to get me here to this point, to be able to sit here with you and have this conversation. Like, I mean, it's incredible. It's really fascinating and beautiful. And I'm just grateful that I'm a part of the Jewish community, to be honest, because I think it's definitely made me who I am in terms of being a fighter, being tenacious, being very intense, being passionate, being loving. Like it's just fostered who I am in almost every way.
Yeah, that was beautifully said, by the way. That's very inspiring. So now just kind of to wrap up, I was wondering, what are your plans once things like this comes out, like post that?
Yeah, I mean, I have a few things that we're figuring out right now to hopefully be the next project. I wish I could say more, but I can say that like I'm excited and that I'm very honestly like ready to get going on them. I'm like, let's go. So exactly. But no, I think it's awesome that I get to share this project with the world and then be ready to jump into whatever's next. So I'm just thrilled that there hopefully, well, there's wood here. I'm knocking on it.
Yes, I'll knock on wood too.
There's a next thing. So yeah.
Yes. Well, that's so exciting. Max, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me and to get on this live with me today. I've had such a great time.
Thank you for having me. It's been a blast.
Absolutely.
All righty. Well, take care.
You too. Have a great rest of your day.